All right, welcome to Reality's Breakdown. Tonight we're going to be talking about extending human life and Aubrey de Grey's work. I'm sorry, Aubrey de Grey. Tonight the hosting cleric is going to be Matt the Apoplectic Atheist. We're also joined by Iron Chariot, and I think we're still joined by the ghost of Sir Jewelot. Although he has gained the ability to talk. We set up an EMF reader and a couple other instruments to allow him to communicate to us. Uh, so don't forget to stick around for the Atheist Spotlight near the end of the show. If you have any suggestions for anything with the show, please feel free to email us at hereticclerics@gmail.com. You can also email us for potential spotlights, things of that nature. Feel free to email us, and also please stick around to the end of the show for our Atheist Spotlight. Now, to get started and to talk about Aubrey de Grey's work of extending human life, I'm going to pass the torch over to Matt the Apoplectic Atheist. Matt?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Glad you can make it. And just like last time I hosted, I kind of wrote everything out beforehand because it helps me gather my thoughts and sound somewhat intelligent, which I know I'm not, but whatever. Real quick, BA, if you could share that picture with everybody. I don't know if it's shared with everybody. This is Aubrey de Grey. I just wanted you guys to see. He looks like a crazy wizard, or as I will state later, necromancer. And here we go. Okay. What if we could live forever? That is, without having to die first. I mention that qualifier because for some reason religious immortality requires you to die. I'm not clear why that's the case, but hey, I don't understand anything else religion has to offer, so... Anyways, what are possible ways to achieve more immortality? The leading theories seem to be extending human life by combating aging and transhumanism. Mind uploading is tossed around, but usually isn't considered true immortality, but digital immortality, and is more akin to cloning. While transhumanism is very interesting and plausible, it is thought of as science fiction and far-fetched by the anti-aging side. I tend to agree. I feel let's fix what we have now, and anything else down the road will be a bonus. I imagine the two outlooks overlap and can benefit from each other. I just wanted to point out that I believe one is more readily attainable. So when will the anti-aging treatments be available? Well, we're probably going to need more than one guy working on it. So who is this one guy? Aubrey de Grey, that crazy bearded necromancer your mother warned you about. Okay. He has a handful of people working with him, but seriously, it seems to be just him and a small group working on this. Aubrey de Grey certainly explains this better than I ever will. He has devoted his life to working on anti-aging, going so far as donating $13 million of the $16.5 million his mother left him when she died. I mean, yeah, he could have given the other 3.5, but the guy needs a house to live in and lifetime supply of beard conditioner, right? So other than fronting his own money, Peter Thiel, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but he's the co-founder of PayPal. He has been one of his only supporters. Doesn't seem like much considering Aubrey is attempting to cure the world's leading cause of suffering, disease, and death. You may be thinking, I thought the leading cause of suffering was depression, starvation, poverty, etc., and the leading cause of disease and death are heart conditions and cancer. Well, Aubrey describes the leading cause of heart conditions and cancers are directly tied to aging. When you take into consideration that disease and death cause untold amounts of suffering, you can see where this is going. Aubrey describes aging by using the example of an automobile. Humans are just like machines, and machines aren't made to live forever. But imagine a classic car that's 100 years old. It wasn't engineered to last that long, but with the proper maintenance, it can potentially last for hundreds of years or more. So here we are accepting death and spending all our resources combating the diseases caused by aging instead of just fixing the root of our trouble? Why? Aubrey describes our complacency as a pro-aging trance, a term coined by Aubrey to describe, and I quote, the impulsion to leap to embarrassingly unjustified conclusions in order to put the horror of aging out of one's mind. Put more simply, it has to do with our fear of aging and death and the coping mechanisms we employ to fool ourselves into thinking aging is natural, unavoidable, and in some cases desirable. If you feel this way and think Aubrey is wasting his time, then please at least have the foresight to think about the future of our species. It may be that future people won't want to stop aging, but without us doing the work now, they won't have an option. The end. Hopefully that was 5 minutes. I'm not sure. So, yeah, there's a lot more on the subject. I highly suggest you guys Google search Aubrey and his work. His company SENS, SENS. It's a non-for-profit company that he created for this cause. And as far as I know, he's the only guy doing this. And yeah, like I said, he could say it a lot better than I can. And there's a lot of information out there on his plan of attack and what he thinks causes aging and what his plans are for fixing these things. But yeah, he's a really cool guy, and in one of his videos he noted that it's great that all these philanthropists are trying to help poor people by, say, curing malaria or all these curable diseases, and we've made great leaps and strides, but aging is something that affects everybody. So, I mean, he even makes the example of rich people who all of a sudden find out they're more prone to getting Parkinson's and then throwing all this money into Parkinson's research. Well, everybody's prone to aging, so why wouldn't everybody be working on this? I don't know. And there's a lot more to it, but hopefully we can discuss that. So, does anybody have anything to say?
So reading into the SENS, the SENS that you were talking about, that he has, I find that certainly he has some good thoughts in terms of why aging occurs, and certainly I keep saying certainly, and my way of looking at why aging occurs is that the DNA that you use becomes corrupt and shortens and becomes unusable.
Telomeres, or what are they called? Telomeres?
The telomeres are probably fine, but
no, that's the tail of the DNA, I believe.
Kinda. So to put together research in this way is a good way to format anti-aging research, in that he's trying to select all the different senescences that he can find and lump them together into one grand sort of experiment or whatnot. But it should be said that each of these isn't necessarily a novel field in itself. It's really, the novel part is to put them together into only anti-aging as the end result. And as such, I feel like his work is useful, but it's, I think it'd be better off trying to raise awareness for this, because the research is out there logarithmically funded compared to his. It's just having this notion of the extended life as the product of it. And in order to not drone on endlessly, here's Belligerent.
Thanks for that, Buck. There's a lot of good stuff there. I would like to, before I talk about some of your points, just say that as far as transhumanism goes, I'm transhumanist. I am a transhumanist in nature. My consciousness was transferred by Charles into the digital world where I currently reside. But besides that, moving forward with what you were saying about telomeres, every time cells reproduce, there is one extension of that DNA falls off, and it's the telomere, and it's the glue holding the DNA together. Eventually, we run out of reproduction. So, that's one of the things that Aubrey, or Dr. de Grey, I should say, has identified as his 7 strategies for ending aging. And I did pull that up off of lifeextension.com. And, okay, so as you can see right here, I'm going to read 7 of them, and I just want to talk about one of his SENS, his cell senescence. There's extracellular junk, cell senescence, extracellular cross-linking, intracellular junk, mitochondrial mutations, cancer-causing nuclear mutations, and epimutations, and cell loss leading to tissue atrophy. And those are the 7 strategies for ending aging. Those are the causes of aging he's identified. And the one that I wanted to hit on real quick was apoptosens. Cells become old, they're no longer able to divide. They've reached the end of their telomere, whereas cancerous cells can divide forever because they don't actually lose anything off the end of their DNA when they reproduce. But in this apoptosens, the cellular senescence, what he aims to do with his research is, with apoptosens, would eliminate the senescent cells by inducing such cells to commit suicide. So he would force apoptosis in that cell, and then a new cell would take its place. And that's mainly because the cell, when it stays behind, they produce inflammatory substances that contribute to many of the diseases that we incur when we age.
Do you have anything more? I wanted to touch on that before we got off it.
No, I'll leave this up if you want. I'll scroll down just a little bit.
I think that's good to leave up because it kind of... I was hoping people would find the stuff on their own, but that's good to leave up. On one of his talks, he was talking about that exact subject. He said there's reasons why we have to cause cells to commit suicide, and he said they found a bacteria, actually, I think it was in mud or something, or like in a swamp, and when introduced in a certain way into cells, he can trigger this. Then he calls them suicide cells. And he said he's already made advances in mice where this has worked, and he's proven that this thing can work. So I don't know if that's just one thing on that subject that he does talk about in his talks. And I guess this is a little more off subject, but he claims that they have gotten mice to live an extra year in the lab, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you take into consideration the lifespan of a mouse, that's pretty good. But yeah. And as Buck was saying, like, all of these things are being worked on separately. So I forget exactly how he put it, something about how it's not novel, these things, but he just happens to bring them together. But his point is a lot of these things are caused by aging, especially cancer, and I don't think heart disease in there, but heart disease too, he talks about, are actually caused by aging, where if we focused on the aging thing, then these things would happen a lot less, kind of. And putting all the money towards the diseases you get from aging is kind of taking away, well, maybe not taking away, but not giving anything to the reasons why you're aging. But I guess they're all kind of included in that. But
And to kind of add on to what you said, that touches on oncosens, one of the senescences. That's cancer-causing nuclear mutations and epimutations in cells. And I'll read that. It says most forms of cancer utilize the enzyme telomerase to maintain long telomeres. The capsid chromosome that keeps them functional is every time a cell reproduces, as our current understanding, it loses a telomere, and then when it reaches the end, it no longer can maintain functionality and becomes inflammatory. But OncoSense proposes to eliminate telomerase as a means of controlling cancer. So telomeres are needed by stem cells, but OncoSense would replace this need by a program of tissue replacement, replenisense, which with age, cells are lost or atrophy, thereby causing tissues to stop functioning properly, and replenisense would utilize stem cell therapies to restore cells and tissues. So he's talking about using stem cells as a treatment to those cancer-causing nuclear mutations in the cells. So I think, Buck, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was looking at these 7 things, and I think the one of the interesting parts is I think it's that first one that's just curing cancer, and that's just one of his 7 things that he wants to do, and so just the complexity of what's involved here is astounding, and some might say overly optimistic, certainly at present, especially considering it's a very small organization. I would say that a lot of this is covered by the stem cell movement, and certainly the idea of fixing all of these things in general will maybe eclipsed in the short run anyways by simply putting in new cells. So something I think while these names are good, trying to find we'd almost become a new organism, completely genetically mutated to the point of non-recognition. Not that that's a terrible thing. It's just not really the idea of what we're going for when we want longevity at this point. So it's just my thoughts on it. I think Iron should be going next.
Yeah, what I have to say kind of takes it in a different direction, but thinking about, people's efforts to extend the life of anything just makes me think whenever we try to enhance or alter any kind of life at all, religious people have always had an opposition saying that that it's playing God, or we're trying to be God, or we're trying to assume the role of God, or in the case of abortion, they're pro-life. And so I would just be interested to see how the religious community reacts, because I feel like the pro-life people would be anti-life extension, which would be kind of a weird scenario. And I think that's another issue that he faces is if he amassed enough of a following, even more of an opposition, just like with gay marriage being legalized. And so I think that would make his research even more difficult.
I agree, and it's not just religious people, it's all types of people have figured out ways to cope and think that aging is okay. You know what I mean? He kind of touched on that when I quoted him. I forget the quote now. I have to close the window, but yeah, my point is, there's going to be other opposition, not just religious people, just people who are scared of going towards a subject, just purely out of fear and basically putting their heads in the sand. So were you gonna go, BA?
Yeah, I did have something to say, and then I forgot.
Oh, okay. I want to say, like, we don't just have to talk about Aubrey de Grey. He was like kind of my introduction into this type of thinking and looking into things like this. I heard about him before I ever heard about transhumanism, which I think transhumanism's awesome and like I'm all for it. I don't know. I just really look up to this guy for what he's doing and devoting his life to it, and it doesn't seem like many people are willing to sacrifice their lives for. I mean, that doesn't sound right because there are people working on cancer and diseases, and that stuff is great, but I don't know. All right, what do you got, BA?
Okay, so everyone, I remembered what I was going to say now, and that is that everyone wants to live longer, because it seems like even though heaven seems like such an amazing place, everyone still, even with predestiny, looks before they cross the street. Those that believe in predestiny. I really think no one is, oh, no, I'm not going to say no one, okay, but the vast majority, at least in the U.S., are not the type of people that are looking forward to getting to heaven any quicker than they would like. So I think that even if, yeah, there's going to be opposition, but I do think that there would not be as much opposition to extending human life as it is for like being concerned where people put their genitals. And that's just my opinion. Like, everyone wants to move the human race forward and better, and they don't want anyone to use stem cells. They don't want anyone to use fetuses, aborted fetuses, because not that they have a problem with the scientific research using the cells and the product that is the fetus at that point. They have a problem with abortion, and that's the backbone. So I don't think they found a way to work around it for the stem cell research. But I really think that many people are going to be on board because everyone wants to live longer. I mean, everyone wants to live more, and no one is in a hurry to get to heaven. Iron, you're next.
Yeah, I agree. Although I seem to remember a small bit of an uproar over cloning years ago. Of course, I was young, so I could be wrong there. But just to go back to what Matt was saying a few minutes ago, I don't think it's going to be all religious people, but I think that religious people have the loudest voice, certainly here in the U.S., but also I think that all major religions having that heaven or nirvana to go to, and their holy books laying out how the life cycle should go. I think that, especially like I said, with them having the loudest voice, that they'll be the biggest opposition if they are indeed in opposition, as BA just pointed out.
Yeah, and certainly the religious aspect of it is something that should be completely ignored because religious anything is ridiculous. So I'm going to just sort of take their sort of views on it and just push it wherever it needs to go, generally. But my thought is, since we are delving a bit into transhumanism, that my thought on transhumanism has long been that we're just going to be computer chips, somehow converted brain to data sort of thing. And it's my thought that this sort of fixing the human body thing may be the wrong direction to go, if only because the human body isn't really entirely necessary. Iron's only got half of his, and he's doing better than the rest of us on YouTube. So,
Oh, damn.
So I just it's an interesting subject to debate back and forth, but I just thought I'd add that.
Well, I think that everyone being computer chips, especially on like a motherboard or something like that, if we're just, all living in one giant air-conditioned server farm, that really takes the shallow behavior, out of our race. Well, wouldn't you think? I mean, unless, we have avatars and we're running around in a Second Life kind of scenario. I mean, besides that, and then everything's interchangeable. I mean, it would kind of make life a lot simpler if we were just data and processing.
Yeah, and that would certainly get life extension completely different meaning, and it would really be an interesting experience when they reformatted the hard drive.
I just want to say real quick that he states that he thinks this can be implemented within the next maybe 20 years. I mean, that's very optimistic. I agree. But do we think transhumanism can be implemented within 20 years? Like, what, what I mean? I think looking at what can be done quicker is a valid argument.
All right, I'll grab a comment from our live chat on YouTube on the Heretic Clerics channel from Mooscal. Doesn't science and medicine make religion irrelevant? It moves the goalpost, certainly. Every time there's a new discovery, the goalpost will get moved, and the God of Gaps will step in to fill what we don't currently understand, because that's easier than trying to learn. So, Mooscal, thank you for commenting in. And Iron?
Well, yeah, first of all, just to respond to that comment, I don't think, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say, I don't think that science makes religion irrelevant, and I honestly don't know if it ever will, because God is kind of an impossible fallacy. So unless science comes up with a way to test God, I don't think science can ever 100% make him irrelevant. And since, people can just say he's outside of space and time, and I mean, even if we did come up with a valid way to test for him, they could just change the definition or his living conditions. But I agree that the human body is not the most practical means of immortality, because the human body is just so frail and fragile, and there's so many things that can upset the balance of the human body. I mean, even if we could do away with all diseases and such, you still have to deal with, broken things, and then physical injury would still exist, as far as I understand it. But I definitely don't think it is impractical to say that we could become some kind of machinery, especially when you consider most of the activity of our brain is just electrical impulses.
I think that's something to note is I think anybody will concede that the body itself isn't ideal, but replicating the human brain and what it can do is so hard. Like, we're definitely going to have bionic limbs and bionic organs, which we already pretty much do, way before we can ever replicate the human brain. Like, if you think of the way a computer works, a computer is awesome at what it does, but it can't do what the brain can do. The brain can do so many different things. It's going to be a really long time till we can perfectly replicate the brain, I believe. But, somebody else want to go?
Yeah, real quick. So, Iron, I'd like to point out something amazing. You said, unless science comes up with a test for God. That's perfect. Anyone who's watching this video, either live or later, if you come up with a test for God, please either email it to thebelligerantatheist@gmail.com or hereticclerics@gmail.com. Or post it as a comment to this video, communicate it to one of our other channels that we have hosting and talking tonight, and we will talk about it on the show. So please, we'll talk about it on our next show. I promise. Anyone that sends it in, we'll kind of we'll take the best one and really quick, and then we'll talk about that next week. So did anyone have anything else before we move on to our current event?
Buck was mentioning that he believes that the brain. Well, I'll let him say it, but do you want to say that, Buck?
Yeah, I think reading about the singularity upcoming as I have, where predictions beyond that point, as reference to technology, are somewhat meaningless just based on the mathematics of where our processing power is going, and that's supposed to be in 2030. So, it's very hard to say, like, oh, in 20 years we'll never be able to do that. But, it could go either way on when that actual point would be. But I still think it'll be relevantly about then. And so the idea that we won't be able to replicate human minds are... I just don't feel like it's... I don't think that... I think we'll be able to do it, because I can't think of the right words to say otherwise. Anyways, so that will finish that segment, and we are heading on to our current event, live from the Heretic Cleric news desk. We have this article here about how in British Columbia it is illegal to sell cryonic services. And certainly, I think that is one of the topics that we didn't quite get into today. But people who are life extensionists in general do often discuss cryonics, if only because there's a need to preserve oneself to the point where they can apply future methods like this. And so this article asks, why is it that anyone would ban such a thing? And the article goes on to say, well, because it's new and because people don't feel right about it and people feel sort of religiously the other way, like, no, we should go back to the earth, and that's unfortunately affecting the politics, which, it's always interesting to see that happen in Canada instead of here. And so it's just having that non-zero chance of going forward. One of the reasons why I chose this topic is that to share it, somewhat of a personal story on the subject, when I was in law school and I was looking for a professor to write a paper with, I looked down the list of available topics, and one of them was transhumanism. And so I remember talking to this professor about, like, what would a legal paper on transhumanism look like? And it's interesting because you look at, when people die naturally, we pretty much erase them, and we go through a process of where we distribute their stuff, and we go through a process where they are not part of the world anymore, because there's no coming back. We've really centered a lot of law and society around that, and so
real quick, can I quote Hitchens?
Sure.
When he was getting close to dying, he said, dying isn't like the party's ending. It's like you got kicked out of the party, and the party keeps going.
Yeah, but, I don't think that's necessarily... While it makes sense as a metaphor, I wouldn't agree with that.
That ties into exactly what you just said, that everybody just erases the person. So the people erasing the person, their party is still going, and getting rid of the person, they're kicking him out of the party.
Well, sure. Yeah. But I think the metaphor there is just a little too nice for it, which is weird for Hitchens. And so, yeah, going on to that, there's they talk about in here, and certainly I've put some effort into researching what it is the legal aspect of cryonics should be. If you decide to get frozen, should all your stuff be, pun intended, frozen as well? I don't know. And if you don't get frozen, do you just get the regular one? But if you do get frozen, you get the cryonics package of death. It's really hard to say how we're gonna do something like this, but in a future where things like Methuselah Project and are trying to extend human life, and where cryonics and various other methods are becoming more prevalent, the question of who are we and what do we do with ourselves rises in many different levels, and I thought this was just a good expression of one of those levels. So I'll pass that around for comment.
I wanted to ask real quick. So what you do with your stuff when you die, isn't that handled with your will, for one? And I want to ask Buck because he's the law expert. And for two, I want to say, couldn't you just liquidate everything or put in your will to liquidate everything, put your money into a savings account or investment, and then when you come back, it'll just gain so much interest, you'll get it all back in spades, basically?
Well, it's very difficult to structure it that way because things can't really be in your name after you're dead. Certainly you could have an agency whose goal it is to, like a trust, to save money for you. But I wouldn't... there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work at that point when you're trying to do it for yourself. I mean, part of the idea of a will is that it goes into effect when you die, and so are you considering yourself dead once you've entered the cryonics, or would you prefer not to have yourself proclaimed dead at that point, so not everything else gets erased as well, like your social security and your identity and things like that? So yeah, I mean, there are workarounds, but it's hard to say which ones would work.
So my question is it kind of like a rapture insurance kind of thing? And you have a good point. No, or do we consider you dead at that point? Because that would legally change a lot of the things. But we'd have to redefine. There would have to be, I think, we would have to define a new state of life. So there would be alive, dead, and then we'd have cryo, in which case or like coma. We could just say coma, or we could say stasis. So you are in a stasis, and you would lock at that point. But my real question that I'm going to end right here on is cryo considered practical? Because it seems like it's quite a huge gamble. Is it a zero-sum game that we're looking at here? Is it equal on both sides, both for the family and both for the person that's being frozen, and is it a practical use?
I want to say real quick, the burden of proof lies on the person to prove that they are alive. So I say they're dead until they prove they are alive again.
That doesn't work in legal terms, but I do
And
like
that's not
that.
entirely fair because, I'd be kind of dead transhuman-wise.
But you can prove you have cognitive abilities and whatnot, you know?
Barely. Don't flatter me too much here.
And then also I wanted to say, I think it's oh, sorry, Dusty. I'll be really quick. My whole theory is all this comes in stages. Take what you can get. If you're gonna die and sorry, Iron. If you're gonna die and transhumanism isn't here and anti-aging isn't here, but cryogenics is here, then take the cryogenics. If you're gonna die and there's other options that seem better, then take that. Cryogenics is certainly better than being put into the grave or cremated. It's still, at least there's some slight chance. But okay, so.
Well, as far as your stuff goes, I don't really think that there's any practical way to retain your stuff. Because assuming you have that process done today, just to take your investment example, for instance, if you have your money invested, you don't know how far it's going to be into the future before we can come up with a way to practically bring that person back to life. So by that time, the company that you put stock in could have gone belly up, or the stock market might be completely different. I don't. There's so many things that could happen between now and then, especially since we don't have a time frame.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not up to anybody to guarantee this guy's money will still be there. My point was that we should not save physical objects, but if we can make an attempt to save his assets, and you know what I mean, like money assets, literally just money. But I feel like
liquidate everything.
Yeah, like liquidate everything or give it to your family, leave it in your will. But I wanted to know, could a will leave instructions to your offspring and say, listen, offspring, hold on to this money for me. Leave the same instructions to your kids to hold on to this money, and when I come back, we'll all share the money. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You can say that, but it's hard to make people do that.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a very, very practical thing. I mean,
it's the most practical I can imagine. What, as opposed to keeping all of the. Yeah, enforceable. It's not very enforceable, I agree, but it's the only way I could see it working.
Well, I think if that is ever going to be a viable means of immortality, if you want to call it that, I think we're going to have to come up with some kind of program where once the person is brought back to life, they're given kind of like a starter package where they're given like a welfare apartment or something, and like the basic assets, and they'll have to work their way back up, because I don't think that there's going to be any way to re-enter the world with what you had before. I think you should have to be given a starter deck, if you will, and build your hand from there again the way you did before.
A respawn stim pack, so to speak. You get that respawn point drop off. I think that the only way it would be effective to prevent a company from going belly up or going bankrupt, so you couldn't have a for-profit that would manage that. You would actually have to have a not-for-profit organization that would be a trust company, that would be kind of an afterlife and before death insurance company to kind of take control of your liquidated assets. So it would be like a bank, but it would be a bank that would have a guarantee with people that would contribute to it. Or maybe the liquidated assets, like you would put all of your liquidated assets into this not-for-profit, and you'd sign an agreement that maybe a percentage of that every month would go back into the not-for-profit to allow it to continue to run into the future. Does anyone have anything about that before we go into our next segment?
Real quick, I just want to say Moose Gal had a really good question, but it looks like these guys want to go. But I think we should address her question.
Well, Matt, read her question.
I don't want to get off subject. I think Iron is going to be more on subject right now, and then I'll go if you don't mind.
Well, I was gonna say, as far as what you said, BA, I think that would be the most practical option. However, I mean, just to give an example, if you went that route and then a hurricane destroyed the company and all its records, or a tsunami or something of that nature, then you're back in the same boat. But I think even if you're not able to save anything, I still think it's worth it, because it's like when you beat a video game and then you go back through the campaign again, like a new game plus kind of thing, because you have to start all over the same way you did before, but you now have the knowledge to get you back to where you were before 10 times faster, and even farther than that. I mean, you have the knowledge the knowledge base you built in your previous life, I suppose. And so you're not really starting from scratch. You're just starting from scratch material-wise.
All right, so you wanted to read Mooscal's comment. Would it be better for the U.S. if our tax money went to fund ways to prolong our life instead of curing a specific disease? And the reason that I'm going to say no, and the reason currently that I'm going to say no for that is that disease will affect more people immediately than we could actively prolong our life. So while and this is a subject that we don't really understand, but we can have organizations that can be funded and have grants and be granted money to do this research, or even privately funded. But I think that we need to continue to fight disease, because disease is the thing that can kill our species if not kept in check, whereas prolonging our life would prolong a healthy life. If that kind of makes sense.
I think I say no until the point it's been proven to work. Once it's been proven to work, we should really focus on it, which who knows when that'll be. But for the same reasons you said, though, I say no, because diseases are an imminent thing that we deal with now, and this could or could not work. But until it's been proven to work, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Anyone, the thumbs up or a yes if you have anything, or not, we'll move on to our next segment. No? Okay. So now is the point in the show where Matt goes and gets the wheel. It's the wheel of scriptures. Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting that out. One too many digital scotches, I guess. Okay, so this is the point where Matt gets the wheel. He's going to put it up into the camera. He's going to spin it. The wheel has a bunch of scriptures on it. He's going to pull the scripture off the wheel, and then he is going to read it for everyone, and then we're going to talk about it briefly, maybe laugh a little bit. Matt, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, spin the wheel. I wonder what you have for us today. I'm kind of excited.
I put money on it that it's from Leviticus.
Well, that's not fair, since it's your wheel and your scriptures. Kind of rigged it.
Well, you got like 90% chance. It is. Leviticus. All right. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. There you go. All them Christians wanna follow these laws. You know how many Christians who cheat on their wives?
With men or other men. I mean, that's
or their neighbors.
Or neighbors, yeah. I think the punishment fits the crime. In this case, I have to say I agree with it. If two people cheat, then they should both be violently murdered. It's stoned in the street, maybe in the square. I think that's perfectly fitting.
Okay, but what if two people technically commit adultery, but only one is consenting? What if a man rapes his neighbor's wife? That's still considered adultery, I would think. But then, since the wife isn't consenting to it, does she still deserve to be put to death?
Yes.
Why?
What I want to know is, when the people are put to death, do we save all of their stuff, or do they get to keep it, or how does that work?
I think we liquidate it and split it amongst the spouses that they cheated on. I think in biblical sense, when a man and a woman, even if he rapes her, I think in that case the woman is put, if I'm not mistaken, now I could be wrong, but there are stories in the Bible that talk about this a little bit. The woman is stoned to death, and then the man has to pay a penance to the husband of the person that he raped. Because rape is different than consensual sex, but in both cases the woman has to die, biblically.
I heard something that if the woman gets raped, then she didn't scream or fight hard enough, so technically she was okay with it. I'm not sure if that was from the Bible or some crazy Muslim thing that's currently said, but...
All that, and if a man is fighting with another man, his woman is not allowed to grab the genitals of the
Don't
other man
ruin
during
the
fight.
quotes for later, dude.
Oh, my bad.
You guys keep doing this to me. I'm gonna.
Don't forget, I doubt if we even have anyone besides Moose Cow watching
Dude,
at this
I got
point.
great
I'm
quotes.
sure
I got
no
all
one...
the testicles. I got all those ones, man.
I don't know how many people are still around at this point in the hour-long video. I hope that there are, and they'll hear us laughing and spoiling things. But besides Moose Cow, I don't even know who would watch past this point.
Not only do I got what's on the wheel, here's a whole stack of even more, dude. I got them loaded up. All right, I got all the testicles.
We need to do some Hadish and some Quran in there too.
Yeah, I don't have any of those, but if I think send me a link. But if I don't know, it's
we all just need to read the Hadish and the Quran and put some stuff together. That's what it is. Are we ready to go on to our spotlight? Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I will screen share this right now. I wasn't going to, but I decided I'm going to screen share it. Okay, now that this is up, so Matt, you're the host. You want to talk about your spotlight?
Oh, Buck was saying something. Oh, he posted a... Okay, we moved on. Yes, so, Atheist Spotlight for this week. Secular Yakking. It's a newer podcast, and I like it. It is swell. So it has two hosts. I was just trying to get Iron to smile when I work, so there you go. It has two hosts, Robert and I believe it's his wife. I might be wrong on this, but I think it's Amy. Okay, so these guys are cool. They talk about some pretty cool stuff, and I enjoy listening to it. But the main thing is Robert was a pretty big supporter of Buck and I since we started, pretty much, and he's a cool guy. I don't know if I'm supposed to give away his identity, but he has his hands in quite a bit of the atheist movement, and he's really cool. So he started this podcast pretty recently. They need more subscribers. They need more followers. They need more support. And yep, he likes all our stuff. And he's a cool dude. And lately he has been reading Robert Greene Ingersoll quotes, which that dude is effing awesome. Like, I knew he was awesome before, but after they started reading these quotes, I love him even more. And the funniest thing is the Robert from this show kind of looks like Robert Greene Ingersoll, and I swear I think he's a reincarnation. So if you guys, you know what I mean, if you guys tell him that we sent you over there, mention that you think he's the reincarnation of Robert Greene Ingersoll as well, and it might be proof of reincarnation and potentially an afterlife if this is true. So I think that's noteworthy. But anyways, they have a YouTube. That's what I mainly listen on. But I try to grab the podcast if I'm on the go. They have a podcast. I know it's on iPhone. I don't know if it's on Android. And they also have a Twitter, a Facebook, and yeah, that's it. So they're really cool.
Yeah, he's on my stuff as well. I see him posting all the time. I see them, actually. I don't know who was doing it at the time, but I see them posting all the time. I know that one time they said they wanted to make it on, but I'm really interested to see what Secular Yakking has. I know I've seen them comment and some of their stuff on Twitter, But yeah, all the links that we've talked about tonight during the show. And then Secular Yakking is our Atheist Spotlight, so they're going to be featured on the right-hand side of the Heretic Clerics channel. Under Atheist Spotlight, they'll be the top pick for the next week, and I will put their Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube up in the links in the description below. Tonight we talked about extending human life, a little bit of transhumanism, and Aubrey de Grey's work, and a little bit also of cryostasis. So, does anyone have anything else that they would like to add? I think that's a no. So, I think we're gonna close it out. And so, everyone, thank you for coming by tonight. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for checking out some of our other videos, and for checking out the people that we highlighted tonight, and people we've highlighted in the past. Some great secularist, humanists, atheists, etc. out there in the community that are just, wanting to have their stuff looked at, much like all of us are. So again, everyone, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate your patronage tonight. So everyone, deuces.